Massachusetts Community Care Network convening. It means so much to all of us to be in this room with so many dedicated community care practitioners, researchers, organizers, and advocates. People who are committed not just to imagining, but building a world rooted in justice and interdependence and care. This network exists to connect us, to weave together individuals and organizations working across sectors and throughout this geography. People who believe that another way is not only possible, but necessary. We are here to strengthen a growing ecosystem of people committed to creating alternatives to punishment, extractive and violent institutions that dominate so much of our society today. Before we begin, it's essential that we ground ourselves in where we are. We are gathered on stolen land. We are on the ancestral lands of the Nipmuc, Nunatak, and Agawam peoples, members of the broader Algonquin language group. And yes, Algonquin people are still here. They are an indigenous group living in eastern Canada and parts of the eastern coast of the United States, with over 8,000 individuals who identify as members of this language and cultural group. They are facing challenges like systemic discrimination, labor value exploitation, and obviously the loss of land. But many Algonquin communities remain active in fighting for their indigenous rights and continue to practice their traditions today. We are here, and in being here, we honor the elders, past, present, and emerging, and we acknowledge the deep history of resistance and wisdom of all Indigenous communities who have always practiced and protected systems of care long before any of us used any of that language. In their memory and in their ongoing presence, we affirm that the Massachusetts Community Care Network is a space that recognizes the violent legacies and continued realities of colonialism, white supremacy, capitalism, heterosexism, and patriarchy. We don't just recognize these forces, we actively reject them. We are here to do the work of unlearning, undoing their harms in our relationships, our movements, and ourselves. We come together in the spirit of love, care, accountability, and struggle. We come together to root our work in values that guide us towards liberation and collective well-being. And so, let us be clear about what we are, the organizers of this convening, stand for. We are prison industrial complex abolitionists. This means we are committed to ending systems of policing, surveillance, and incarceration. We believe in building life-affirming alternatives grounded in restoration, healing, and accountability, not punishment. We are for disability justice. We recognize that all bodies are valuable and that liberation must center the needs, wisdom, and leadership of people who are disabled. We aim to create spaces that are accessible, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and politically. We are for language justice. Everyone has the right to express themselves in the language that best reflects their identity and experience. We commit to creating multilingual spaces where all voices are heard and understood. We are for community, interdependence, and self-actualization for all. We believe that none of us are free until all of us are free. We care for one another, not out of charity, but because our lives are bound together. This is a space where hatred, discrimination, and hierarchies of human worth have no home. However, we do acknowledge that there are hierarchies of care. Those in immediate need of support must be cared for first. If you have a need today, please don't hesitate to address it or to name it. We invite you to speak your needs clearly and in plain language so we as a community can respond with compassion and support. And if you are able to offer care, offer it freely and generously. Let today be a space of growth, connection, and practice. Let us not just talk about the world we want, but we must model it, feel it, and co-create it in every interaction we have. Okay, we're so glad you're here. Let's begin. I want to invite Ebony to help us. Thank you.
Peace and love, everybody. Happy Saturday. I just want to ground and center us and activate the liberation energy in the room. So I invite you all to, I want us to take a couple of deep breaths together and just ground and center. And I'm going to play this quartz crystal singing bowl, which amplifies the intention. And it's also a master healing stone. So it heals our energy body, the whole energy body, while it's played. So I just invite you to call on your higher power, your divine team, however you see that, and ask for all divine assistance in helping us to release all energies that no longer serve us in our highest and best good. And when I say energies, I mean people, places, things, belief systems that are causing us harm and dysfunction. So I also do Reiki. I'm a Reiki master, so I will be sending Reiki unconditionally loving energy to you all, whoever's open to it. And whoever's not, don't worry, it'll just go right around you. And so on the count of 3, I guess we can start by calling on our higher power together if you already haven't done that. And imagining rainbow healing light coming right in through the top of your head at your crown chakra, traveling down and out through every atom and cell in your body, clearing and cleansing all toxic energies from your body and activating your divinity. And imagine those energies just traveling out through the soles of your feet and the pores of your body on every exhale. So we're inhaling unconditional love, light, and healing energies, and we're exhaling all stress, all toxic thoughts of people, places, and things that no longer serve us. And I also invite you to imagine any cords, ties, and attachments, energetic, that you have to people, places, things, emotional residue that no longer serves you, emotional patterns or behavioral patterns that you want to release. Just imagine them breaking off as you release all these toxic energies. And I'm asking all of our divine teams and the source of all creation energy to assist in this process and to protect this space and to just flood unconditional love and light and healing energy in. And so 1, 2, 3, we're going to breathe in through our nose and out through our mouths with a sigh or with a sound. And just be curious about where you feel these sounds in your body. Breathing in the energies of unconditional love, light, and healing. Breathing out all stress, all toxic thoughts, all energetic cords, ties, and attachments to people, places, and things that no longer serve you. Calling back your power from any person, place, or thing you've given it to, consciously or unconsciously. Noticing any colors that come to you. Knowing those are the chakras that are activating and aligning in this time. So as the vibrations simmer to a settle in your body, I invite you to just notice what you're feeling and just allow these energies a few moments to integrate before we go about our days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ebony. All right. Now I think we're ready to begin the speaking portion. Yeah. Okay. I want to invite Cameron. Cameron Wells, everyone.
Hi, folks. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm Cameron Wells. I'm helping to support today's convening. Like Stephanie said, we are going to start off with a panel conversation with a couple of practitioners who are joining us, some here in person, some on our Zoom, so that we can learn more about the great work they're doing in their communities. We'll have a chance after hearing from them for you all to ask some questions, again, both here in the room and on Zoom. After that, I'll hand things over to Virginia to give our audience members who are interested the chance to share about work that they're part of in their community. So I think, Javier, if you could come up and join me on what I think will just be a two-person panel here in the room, but we've got more friends on Zoom. Okay, now it's an official panel that we're sitting down in, like we're at the UN or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Folks, how's sound? Everybody able to hear us? Folks on Zoom, hopefully you can hear us when we talk into these mics. I'm going to take that as a yes, and I'm watching the screen, though. If any problems pop up, maybe if someone can just hop on video or put in the chat so that we can see it. Great. So I'm going to start, folks, with...
Great. Sorry, just saying the sound is great on Zoom.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to start, folks, with some introductions of our panelists that we're really grateful to have some time with this morning. Starting here to my right in our space today, Javier Luengo Garrido of the ACLU of Massachusetts. Javier is the ACL of Massachusetts Deputy Field Director for Regional Engagement. He joined the ACLU in 2017, coordinating the Immigrant Protection Project, where his role was to support immigrant families and coordinate access to regional resources and family preparedness documents. During this time, he and a team of local attorneys also worked on the parole and bond cases locally and at the southern border. Currently, Javier's work focuses on multiple issues across the ACLU organization, spanning immigration, racial justice, police accountability, technology, and civil rights. And he also works on municipal and statewide advocacy and campaigns. Javier, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. On Zoom, we are joined by our friends Naisha Jackson and Alexis Hall. Naisha Jackson is a trans Sierra Leonean American anti-disciplinary artist, DJ, facilitator, and journalist who's based in Boston. In their art making, they explore the themes of play and wonder. They're interested in telling stories of hope and resistance in the Boston area. Currently, they are working on creating an interactive art spaces and supporting organizers and navigating conflict in their communities. Naisha, thanks for joining us this morning. And also, I should say, apologies, Naisha and Alexis are representing Unity Circles, also based in Boston. Alexis Hall is a program manager at Unity Circles, as well as a facilitator and amateur documentary filmmaker. She is based in Providence, Rhode Island, where she is involved with Sista Fire and the Queer Refractions Lab. Alexis, thanks for being here as well. And last but not least, also joining us on Zoom is Tanisha Arena of A Call for Change and Growing a New Heart, Western Massachusetts. Tanisha is a Black woman in community leadership as the executive director of Arise for Social Justice, occupying the world's messiest intersection, the space where race, gender, culture, identity, politics, history, and the law all collide. She is a commissioner on the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women, advocating for the needs of women and girls across the Commonwealth. She has a passion for social justice, authentic leadership, and speaking truth to power. She's also the host of the award-winning podcast Unapologetic, bringing the hard truths of social issues to the forefront, connecting past to the present, as well as a consultant/trainer for Growing a New Heart and the Sojourner Truth School. She is a published author, public speaker, and freelance writer, but says that her best role is being the Graham to Penelope, Jalen Jr., and Kyle Jr. Tanisha, thanks for being here with us this morning as well. Folks, I'm going to start by opening up with a pretty simple question to get us started, and if we can go kind of one at a time, I might start, at least for right now, with Javier. A question we'd love to know about is, could you tell us about the work that you're doing in your community right now, and what are some of the most pressing or immediate opportunities that your work is responding to? Can we start with you, Javier?
Yeah. First, thanks. Good morning, everybody. We're going into uncharted territory in relationship to the new administration at the White House. And always when I start talking about my work, I start saying that I grew up, my first 10 years of life in Chile were under a dictatorship fully funded and trained by the US. Half of my family is in Chile, in Argentina. 5,000 people detained, tortured, and disappear. In Chile, 45,000 detained, tortured, and disappear in Argentina. Fully funded, fully trained by the US. And this rings truthful even more so now. And the reason what I'm saying is, for example, in the last 2 weeks, part of my job has been people, immigrants coming back to the country. We're talking about green card holders being detained at the port of entry in airports and kidnapped by Border Patrol, which means that they are being taken to secondary and they disappear for 48, 56 hours. And they had been looking for, and what they are trying to do is pretty much trying to deport them immediately so they don't have to deal with any deportation proceedings. Part of my job has been getting them detained on record, which is frightening, which means that it's trying to force Border Patrol and ICE to serve charging documents. So rather than them being kidnapped and nobody knowing where they are, they have to be charged and transported to a detention facility. Building the connection with dictatorships, the human rights organizations in Central South America, a lot of the work that they did was to get people that were detained on record so they would avoid being disappeared by the regime. That's one of the things that we have been doing pretty proactive in the last couple of weeks. Also, the fact that anybody knows what unaccompanied minors are, is minors coming into the border without mom or dad, even if they are coming with any other relative. Those minors during the last 10, 15 years has been, taken by the Office of Refugee and Resettlement and sent to concentration camps for children, even if they call, detention facility for children. And then if the child comes with a name and a phone number, they would connect with the family and would be passed to the family after, taking biometrics, CORI, background checks, and committing to receive the children. So right now, those undocumented families are being targeted with ICE doing what they are calling wellness check, which they are visiting and forcing families to open the door for ICE to go into those houses under the premise of wellness check, which is specifically the branch of ICE that is doing it is HSI, which is Homeland Security Investigation, that deal with human trafficking and criminal investigation. We're seeing this as an escalation and targeting of immigrant families, and possibly families being charged with trafficking. So I'm just working with families trying to navigate the fact that ICE is being used to the wellness check, which is absurd. The other thing that we're doing family preparedness, it's something that we're doing pretty heavily across the state, which is mom or dad having to choose a third person to be able to take care of the kids if they get deported, if they get detained. It's really complicated to do it from the point of view that nobody wants to think about the worst case scenario. So we have done several clinics in the last couple of weeks. And yesterday I did my third presentation and workshop with a graduate student at UMass that had their visa revoked. And it's interesting because every time that I do training, I do anti-raid training and know your rights training. I don't know if you know, a couple of weeks ago, 370 undocumented community members were detained in Massachusetts in a 5-day coordinated operation between ICE, ATF, FBI, and DEA. But as soon as one single grad student gets detained, we forget about 370 people detained from the immigrant community. So dealing with this narrative of the deserving and the undeserving immigrant, the fact that you need to be sort of remarkable or exceptional to be able to be counted. So that sort of has been my last 3 to 4 weeks of work.
Thank you, Javier. That's a lot in 3 to 4 weeks. Really intense. Thank you for sharing. Let's go to our friends on Zoom. And Alexis and Nahisha, can I pass to you collectively? Would love to know either independently or together, what work are you doing in your community? What things are you responding to?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Lauren, I don't know if you have the slides available, if that is possible. But wanted to talk a little bit about the work that we have been doing at Unity Circles. And we've really been calling this an exploration into navigating conflict in care work communities in Boston. And we're doing this through a participatory action research project, which I'll share a little bit about. Next slide, please. So this work is really coming out of a place where Unity Circles has been, deep in restorative justice and transformative justice work, support, education in the Boston area for over the past 12 years, and has come to the place where the organization is needing to sunset, which is actually happening very soon in the summer. And so we were really left with this question around, we know this work is so important. We want to see transformative justice thrive in the Boston community. So how can we end well? What can we do to, leave the ecosystem with any sort of data or resources that can help continue the thriving as we kind of move into this next stage without Unity Circles being, a formal organization. So we set out in early January to start a participatory action research project. And some of our goals here, we really wanted to, identify what the needs and gaps are related to conflict, highlight, what is already existing, what is already working, get a better picture of the transformative justice ecosystem, but really start to build in more unity and collaboration. And then ultimately thinking about what are the resources that the community is articulating that would be actually helpful to continue transformative justice work in the community. Next slide, please. So our research, we are a group of about 5 researchers. There's Naisha, and I know Gabe is also on the Zoom as well. And we've also been partnering with some of our, community partners to support us in this research as well. And so our research question has been, how do care workers in Boston navigate conflict with each other? And then also, what is needed to sustain a more transformative justice aligned approach to navigating conflict among care workers in Boston? And you can see here what our definition of care work has been for the purposes of this research. But through our research over the past couple months, we did a combination of surveys, in-depth interviews, and focus groups. And so we were able to get a variety of responses. Next slide, please. We talked to over 68 respondents, and you can see here the next couple slides are just kind of demographics. We have a pretty wide range of ages, and then this is self-identified race, ethnicity, and then different folks from different tenures. We thought that was important to think about, like, how long have people really been in this work, and how does that maybe affect some of the responses that they've gotten. Next slide, please. So I will admit that we are still very much in the process of this. We are still in our analysis phase. We are not to the point where we have conclusions yet, but some of the things that we have been looking at in our analysis phase are really these three areas of what has been helpful to folks already in navigating conflict within care work communities. Also, what has been challenging? Well, what are the specific challenges that are coming up for folks? And then getting a sense from folks directly around what kind of support would you want to better navigate conflict within care work communities. And so we're just in the beginning stages of this, but wanted to share out some of what we're seeing. Next slide, please. We started with looking at what the challenges have been around navigating conflict, and we're starting to see some of these themes emerge. So folks talking about the sense of urgency and difficulty prioritizing turning to conflict when we all know there is such dire crises, multiple crises going on right now that folks are responding to, and so trying to understand that balance. Also things like lack of trust and resentment. We saw a lot around avoidance and grief, and even grief as we're all coming in with so much grief, and how does grief, when we don't make the time to process that, how does that actually potentially lead to more conflict within our communities? And then a huge piece has been folks articulating just the lack of capacity, being stretched thin, whether that is in time or people or resources, knowledge, and thinking about how does that lack of capacity affect the sustainability of the organizing and the care work in a long term is something that we're hoping to dive into more through our research. I'll pass it to Naisha to talk about just a few of the things that we've seen from the data.
Yeah, so the next slide, please. So we're gonna go, or the next few slides are gonna have some quotes that are from people who we interviewed or were part of focus groups that kind of illuminate some of the themes that Alexis was talking about. So this quote, I'll kind of give people some time to read it out for themselves. So I think that this quote kind of speaks to what Alexis was talking about people kind of being struggling to sustain their movements and have the energy to be able to do organizing work in and of itself. And then when there's conflict that happens, kind of struggling to know how to address that and have the energy to do that in a meaningful way that doesn't create more conflict, more harm, more rupture. So this was definitely one of the themes that we have been seeing in our data. Next slide, please. I'll give people a chance to read it. So this slide, I think, speaks to the avoidant element that we were speaking about, where people are kind of coming into organizing spaces. We're finding with their own set of socialization, especially in a world where we are taught to avoid conflict and avoid when there are issues that come up. So kind of trying to, from a TJ perspective, think about how can we get organizers and care workers to think outside of that socialization and to see conflict as something that is inevitable and to create structure and plans around that in their communities, as opposed to ending things, as this quote said, or avoiding talking about it entirely, because conflict is it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So just preparing for that is important. Next slide, please. I think, oh, okay. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. I'm not sure about time too. So if I need to wrap up, somebody can let me know.
You're
Yeah,
doing
actually,
great.
could you read these quotes aloud just for folks in the studio who might not be close enough to the screen to read them?
Got you. Okay.
I think maybe starting now.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Capacity to build systems proactively has been a major challenge. It's often the same people who are holding down care work and mental health work and supporting folks in crisis who are also called in to support with. So I think that this quote really talks about kind of, it's similar to the first one that we talked about, but it's difficult for people to figure out who is actually going to be helping to navigate conflict when it does come up, because people are oftentimes stretched thin to begin with. So it's hard to call on the same people who are already burnt out and exhausted to then take on the load of figuring out how to repair things amongst organizers and care workers. Next slide. So in terms of support for us and this sort of convening and the purpose of it, so we are still in the analysis phase, as Alexis said, but we are kind of in the phase of brainstorming right now to figure out how we are going to disseminate this information and data in the end. So we're thinking about like zines, some kind of resourcing sharing, some kind of database of some sort to collect people, practitioners, TJ practitioners who would be able to support organizers and care workers to meet some of the needs that are coming up in our data and our collection process. Something else that we also talked about was finding ways to be more interconnected in the Boston area with other care workers and organizers. We talked about how everything feels very siloed and it's hard to sort of build out networks and connections in that way. And people are not always knowledgeable about what is going on in the Boston area. So trying to find ways to do that and build out our networks for sure. So once we have our sort of physical or digital materials that sort of encompass everything that we have been working on for the past couple of months, then I think it would be very helpful to have people who are part of this convening to share out and also to digest and metabolize some of what we've been talking about for themselves and their own communities and people. So that's all we have for now, but thank you.
Thank you so much, you two. That's really thoughtful and critical work. That quote about carrying around the rock that is grief is going to stick with me. That's really powerful. I wonder really quickly, just as a clarifying question for my own understanding, the kinds of conflicts that your work is studying, are these personal conflicts that come up between care providers, frustrations, or like difficult personal situations? Could you share some examples of what are the kinds of conflicts that are taking so much energy from care workers?
Yeah, I mean, it's really been a range. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but one of the things that we asked in our survey was around like, what type of conflict are you experiencing? So it was between two people, within your organization and between organizations were kind of the options. And we really saw the full range of that. So, like interpersonal conflict, maybe between two people within the same organization. And then you start to think about like, what are the like within the organizations, like group conflicts or like, power dynamics, things like that. And then when we think about maybe more like coalition spaces where orgs are coming together and actually seeing conflicts like between different folks trying to maybe work together, things like that. So it really is across the board.
Thanks, Alexis. That's clarifying. And thanks again, you two, for sharing. Tanisha, thank you for being patient. We'd love to hear what kind of work you're involved with in your community and what's top of mind and high priority for you these days.
Yeah, I also have some slides if Lauren could put those up, and I'll be brief. And I also have to make sure that in my mind I keep the work separate because what I'm seeing at Arise looks different than what we're seeing on the helpline. So the work of the helpline, we started out with basically emergent liberation strategy, which addresses a lot of the things that were just brought up in the last presentation, looking at individual transformation, group transformation, and then the collective outcomes. But here is the flyer for the helpline. Definitely, folks, take pictures, write down the number, feel free to share this. This is a community-based transformative justice innovation. When we look at the world of domestic violence, people who are harmed are usually the focus. But if we're doing prevention work, doesn't it make sense to look at the people who are causing the harm and offering them a way to have transformation? So this is what the helpline is. And it's what I would say second iteration with the name change, a call for change helpline, because the people who are calling, they are calling to make a change. Like if you ever wondered if your relationship is safe, if you've been intimidated or controlled by your partner, and if you have questions about the ways you're seeking sexual consent, for example, you can call this number and get real time help and support. It's confidential, it's anonymous, like for real, confidential and anonymous. If you want to call and say your name is Pancake, okay, we're going to call you Pancake. And it is not a carceral solution. It's also available for young people. If we're going to interrupt these patterns of behavior, we should start with our young people. So we had focus groups, different parts of community that had concerns. What do the providers think about this? How does the community feel about this? Queer community, the BIPOC community, what are the concerns? And taking that into account. I am an advisory board member. I've been with the helpline since its inception. And the group of us, we come from different spaces and places. There are folks who are part of the judicial system. There are folks who are abolitionists, burn it down. There are folks who are somewhere in the middle. The point is, we all agree that we need to have something different. So that's our common ground. And in the search for something different, this is what we've come up with. Now, we have seen an uptick in calls, which that's a good thing, right? Because there are people who call and it's like, we'll ask them like, where do you want to be in the next 30 minutes? Do you want to be in your house playing your Xbox or do you want to be in the back of a cop car? People get to make these decisions and we're asking them to look at what's happening, how their behavior is impacting other people around them, the decision that they're making in relation to other people. Is this a decision that you make with everybody that you're in relationship with? Or is it just your partner or your kids? Or, why are you not doing this with your boss? Is it because you recognize that there are consequences in that space? So there's the next slide, the last slide, talks about some of the training, not this should be one more. Compassion Accountable Conversations is exactly what it says here. It's an introductory skill training for community, for people who work with people who cause harm. How do we hold those folks accountable without replicating the dominance that our culture is riddled with, right? Like you can't abuse somebody into not being abusive, and you can't coerce them into not being a coercive person. We are called to show up different. So this is one of the trainings that we offer through Going a New Heart. Our helpline responders are required to take this training. There are a few other trainings that we offer as well. I'll point out the dialogues across differences, which it's a skill set that helps people talk through these differences across profound social location. Like for the group that went ahead, like we've got folks that are struggling through conflict, and how do they do this? And it's exhausting. It is. And dialogues is a skill set that helps folks have those really hard conversations and then also make decisions about when to have those conversations and how. Because if you're talking to someone who embodies a whole bunch of abusive values, there's a different set of tools for that. And how the young folks, there's an app for that. We've got an app for that. So what we're seeing are folks who need the support. We're offering the support in a way it does not replicate the dominance that is baked into everything else that we do. We have repeat callers. We're seeing a reduction in the harm that happens in community in those ways. So I invite folks to check out Growing a New Heart, look into the compassionate, accountable conversations, the dialogues across differences, and write down the number for the helpline. It is available for providers. So if you've got a client and you're like, I don't know, maybe they are abusive, I'm not sure, you can call and get support. If you are concerned about the behavior of your partner, or if you're someone you're like, oh, am I this person? You can call the helpline and get honest, supportive answers that do not involve the carceral system, because that would stop somebody from calling. Like, I'm in that intersection. I'm a Black lesbian. Am I calling the cops? That doesn't make me feel safe. And we acknowledge that in the spaces. Like, that doesn't represent safety for everyone. So we're showing up with the humility that's required. We're offering the soul care. We're also looking to share with others the space of how do we hold people who have caused harm accountable in compassionate ways that don't replicate the dominance, because we're really good at that. Like, I lead with accountability. I will nail you to the wall for all the things that you've done wrong, but that does not get us to the place that we want to be. We need the compassion. That is the doorway. So I'm going to stop talking, and we can continue on this panel.
Thanks so much, Tanisha. Those seem like really, really critical and really thoughtfully considered resources. Thanks for sharing them. And thanks everyone for giving us some insight into your work and what's important in your communities right now. I want to pose one more question to our panelists before we start to pivot to our audience for questions and opportunities for them to share. And the question I want to have each of you think about is, one of the key purposes of today is trying to bring folks from across the state who are all invested in one format or another in providing community care. And I'd love to know what kind of support, resource, or just general, let's call it like backup, whether it's tangible or intangible, from a statewide network like this one gathered here today, would feel supportive or beneficial for the work that you're doing. How can this group of folks and others that we bring into the fold be supporting your work? Give you a second to reflect on that. And Javier, I wonder if you could start us off again when something occurs to you. What are things that this group and others who can't be here today, what can they be doing to support your work?
So when we're talking about non-carceral, I think it's complicated in the context of immigration, but also pretty telling. And being honest, undocumented folks and immigrants are an easy target, but it's an easy target for the starting point for something else. They go from undocumented to international students, to naturalized citizens, to citizens, right? In the context that we're living now, the escalation is going to keep going, and that's something that we need to be aware and how those things are connecting with each other. From the point of view of work that we're doing, and that groups like this one can be really helpful, there are a couple of things. The first one is with organizations that are sort of statewide and also local, like the Pine Valley Workers Center, Neighbor to Neighbor, Mujeres Victoriosas from New Bedford. We have been working in the Luce hotline, which is an ICE watch and a hotline for people to report ICE activity. And that's really, really important in different levels, because one of the things that my team has made priority, it's doing anti-raid and self-defense based on rights of the undocumented community priority in schools, school settings, elementary school, high school, middle school. And what we're seeing is that administrators and teachers always tell us the same thing, that children are not being sent to school. I mean, we were presenting in Chelsea a couple of weeks ago, and there was a rumor that ICE was in Chelsea, so almost no immigrant student was sent to school, and parents are staying at home. And the reality is that a massive amount of those reports are false, and are false and are out there because by design, they want to create fear. It's easier to target a community that is fearful, a community that is isolated, in a community that doesn't want to be seen. So the Luce hotline and the ICE Watch, what it does is confirm or throw light into situations that are not true. We have seen ICE in Sunderland recently that was confirmed. We had massive amount of detentions and some activity in Pittsfield, also Springfield. Being able to be part of that, being able to use the ability of networks that are embedded within the community to be able to do that is massive. Before this coalition started doing the hotline and the ICE Watch, between a report and somebody showing up was 45 minutes to an hour. By that time, nobody was there. We had been able to cut the time to 10 minutes to 5 minutes. So that, and the beautiful thing is that the organizations, what they do after, if there was an ICE operation or not, they canvass the community where that happened, building relationships and understanding who is living there, and for people to, protect themselves if that was the case, that they are undocumented or they are possible targets. So seeing the commonality of different networks and partnering each other, I think that's one. The other is, is this being recorded? Okay, you're gonna get a different version of me. My organization, it's doing a bill that is called Dignity Not Deportations. We normalize undocumented folks being caged, even though we're talking about a civil infraction, right? And the other civil infraction that I can think that somebody would be caged would be being held in contempt, being disrespectful to a judge. But we don't really care for undocumented folks because, poor people and people of color. The ACLU with other partners, we wrote this bill to end the caging of undocumented folks, sponsored by the state of Massachusetts. The last detention facility in Massachusetts with an ICE section, it's Plymouth County Jail. We used to have one in Franklin County Jail. ICE it's really easy for ICE to have to drive, an hour and a half to 2 hours round trip to detain community members and drop them, cage them, and go back to the community to keep targeting. We should stop that. We should use this sort of non-carceral networks and coalitions to see the commonality, and that the fact that, I don't know if you know, but in immigration court, if I'm detained or have an immigration case, I have the right to an attorney as long as I can pay for one. I'm not going to get an attorney assigned to me, which means that you're going to have a tiny Guatemalan lady with 3 kids in front of an immigration judge, and with opposite counsel, a full-fledged ICE attorney. So we need to tackle what is detention. And detention in the Trump administration is going to take many forms, and that forms are going to escalate, and wouldn't be far-fetched to think that citizens and people who are speaking against the system are going to be targeted in some point sooner or later.
Thank you, Javier. Really important work happening, and I'm taking notes on how we can support dignity, not deportation, contributing to that ICE activity hotline when we have information. Thanks for sharing those opportunities.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Naisha and Alexis, would love to hear from you. What are supports, tangible or intangible, that a statewide network like this one could be doing to help support your work?
You want to start, Naisha?
I had kind of mentioned it at the end of the presentation, but when we do come out with whatever materials we're going to create to encompass our data collection, sharing it out, I think would be really helpful, um, because this is specific to Boston area, but it's also things that are happening in organizing communities everywhere. So there is definitely value in everyone being able to see it and reflect and talk about it with the people that are important to them. Yeah.
Thanks, Naisha. I think you can count us all as people who will be excited to receive and share that work when it's ready. I'm sure we can find a way to make sure that gets shared with all the folks who are here today. And thanks again for doing that work. Tanisha, same question for you. What could the statewide network be doing to support your work and your community?
I would say supporting the work. It's panels like this, us being able to interact with each other and not be siloed. Um, we're all carrying heavy loads in this work, but the load doesn't have to be heavy if it is shared. That is one of the things, it's by design that, we're out here isolated and feeling like we have to do all these things by ourselves and we are exhausted. So the more that we can connect with each other, share our resources, share our knowledge and community building and look out for each other, that is always going to be helpful. I've been saying the government's not coming to save us. It has never come to save us. If you are any marginalized, othered identity, it's not for you. So it's not for us. So we have to be for each other across all of the differences that we have, because our commonality is we're on the same team. Like, this is a class war that's happening, whether we're talking about immigration, whether we're talking about a war on poor people, all of those pieces. So it's team billionaire versus everybody else, and we're on team everybody else. So keeping that at the center and showing up for each other. If it's, hey, I'm going to say that the ICE folks were over there. Hey, I'm going to make sure that we have, a community garden. We're feeding folks in our community. We're having plans to support each other. That's going to be helpful. If we have folks in our community who are showing up in ways that are less than ideal, that they're abusive, there's questions, use the helpline. We have a responsibility to each other to hold each other accountable in loving ways. Again, not replicating the dominance that exists all the way around us. And we can do that. Part of this work, part of liberation and all that is saying, hey, you need this help. This is what it looks like. And holding each other accountable in those ways and then circling back, right? We don't have to throw away people. We need everybody in this space, all of the gifts, all of the wisdom, and we need to be together and not in silos. So us being able to convene in these ways to support each other, hear about our work, to amplify our work and voices is always going to be helpful.
That's really beautifully said, Tanisha. Thanks. Yeah, good reminder. We're all on the same team. Every contribution matters. Panelists, thank you again so much for sharing your work and how we can be supportive. I want to do a quick time check and run of show. We're a little bit past noon. Virginia, do we want to pivot to audience share outs? Take a few minutes for questions first.
Thank you for asking. The audience. Okay, sorry.
Awesome. So maybe one way we can do this, folks in the room, if you've got a question for one of our panelists, maybe raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you. Folks on Zoom, if you've got a question, maybe flag it in the chat for Lauren. And then Lauren, if you're getting questions, I might turn to you to say, take one off the top of the list and read it for us, and our panelists can respond.
Sounds good, Cam.
Any questions? Okay.
Hi, my name's Monica. I always have a question, just be forewarned. I found your question about interpersonal versus organizational conflict that was about the Unity folks really interesting. What I thought was missing, and would be curious about what people think about, is the conflict that happens maybe with a client, right? So there's somebody who's agitated, you might be a caseworker. What is anybody looking at that kind of conflict? And I have personal experience where my son, who has schizophrenia, had an altercation with a caseworker that led to his arrest, right? So he was definitely not behaving well, but we rely on that part of the workforce to be there for their clients. And also I think about, this is a non-carceral conversation. A lot of people end up getting arrested because they are agitated in front of police or other people who feel they can't control their behavior, and that's how they end up arrested. So I just thought that was a missing component to the conversation. And didn't know if anyone had thoughts on it.
Yeah, thank you for that. I definitely can see that that's a really common, I think, need and interaction that you're articulating. I think just for the scope of the research we were doing, we were really focusing on more that interpersonal and interorganizational. So don't have so much to offer from this project around that, but yeah, I really appreciate you kind of raising that, and curious if that's something maybe we can sit with in terms of when we are articulating our findings, is that is another area of need that we could explore more and could really use some more research and supports in the future, for sure.
Thanks for the question. Lauren, can I turn to you briefly? Any questions from our Zoom audience?
Not yet, but good reminder if anyone has a question to throw it in the chat right now.
Thanks. I think I see a hand back here in our room.
Hi, Tanisha, specifically for you, kind of how do you deal with that incessant Western Mass kind of whinging about liability? Because it is the whole thing here, right? And then kind of a second part to that question is, how do you deal with the reality of our area too, of everybody wants you to try a thing and then people don't support it once it's in action. People will walk you across a plank. So I guess, how do you think about the liability piece of it, and then the kind of pendulum swinging on support from the community?
Oh, that's a good question. In terms of the lack of liability, I'm the accountability person. That is the foot that I naturally lead with. So if someone is trying to skirt their accountability or the liability, I'm the person that's going to catch it. And I name the thing in all of the spaces. Folks who know me on Zoom, my face makes faces when somebody says something, and I'm just like, I know you're not serious, right? So calling someone out on the things. We are in Western Massachusetts, and everybody thinks that, oh, it's so progressive, it's Western Mass. I'm like, no, their racism is just we got pretty foliage and stuff, but it's still here. And we have to talk about that if we're going to actually get anywhere about it. So I name the things in the spaces. I'm the person who will take the risks and naming that they're a risk. And I will also name that it's easier for me because my day job is a radical organization. We're naming the things and protesting against the things all the time. So I'm not someone who's showing up in a space that has to worry about, oh, somebody's going to call my job and they're going to get me fired. There's no manager that you can call, even though you're mad that I've said your white supremacy and racism is showing. So I rock with that. And it does change the way that people engage, because they realize oh, I can't necessarily pull these tricks in this space, which we want that. Or they double down on their racism and other bad policy things. And then we get to see them clearly for who they are. And then it's our responsibility to move accordingly. Oh, this is what you want to do. Okay, bet. Now, as for that walk in the plank business, I'm not a plank walker. So you're not about to hang me out to dry. We can talk about the things. And also part of that naming, you want to keep recycling ideas that don't work so that you can check a box and say that you've done a thing. we have a really big problem across our sector with that very thing. It's one of the tenets of white supremacy. Like, we're going to do more research and we're going to look at this thing. You already know the answer. You don't want to do the thing that would solve the problem because you're heavily invested in the problem. So I rock with the people who are willing, who want to build something different than what we have. Growing a New Heart works with the willing. We're not forcing anybody because, again, you can't force somebody to doing something that's not how this works, right? And it's not my job to convince you. If you want to come along because you know in your spirit that there's got to be a better way of doing this, then the people will come. Like, literally, they will come. We get to operate in a way, again, not rooted in dominant culture. We talk about it. We operate in ways that dismantle dominant culture. Like, everything's in a rush. You're intentionally exhausted. Like, if that's how you're running your meeting, if those are the things that you want to talk about, I'm not going to be there. I don't necessarily want to be at your table. We can build a different table that does not operate in those ways. So I'm not necessarily looking for the same old folks, supportive community because they operate in these ways. You're wishy-washy. If we're going to build something new and we're going to do cutting edge, then we need to do cutting edge. And we're being in that. We're being in that together. And those are some of the important pieces. So if you don't see me in a place, it's because I ain't want to be there, or I wasn't invited because I'm the person who's going to say the thing that people don't want to hear because it disrupts the status quo that has never served us. So I hope that answers your question.
Action versus inaction. Do we have any other questions? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our panelists. A big applause.